Then There's California, a podcast featuring members of the California State Senate Democratic Caucus in conversation about their lives, their legislative priorities, policies, and other related issues that help make California exceptional. From the city of Reedley in Fresno County in California's Central Valley, I'm Brian Green. It is 2022, and California is beginning what will likely be its third consecutive year of extreme drought. Rivers, reservoirs, and canals are low and strained. Aquifers are draining. Wells are going dry. Some households don't even have access to safe and reliable clean water, where others are rationing and have been for months. Climate change in California has resulted in higher than average temperatures and decreased rainfall, leading to increased and chronic dry spells. And nowhere in the state are the effects of the discouraging dance of drought and climate change more acutely seen and felt than in California's bountiful Central Valley. Farmers here are dealing with dwindling water and government water allocation, leading to thousands and thousands of acres of farmland taken out of production and going fallow. Residents in the valley still jockey desperately for access to not only plentiful water, but also plentiful, clean, safe drinking water, along with struggles for access to healthy food and nutrition. One could say California's Central Valley is coming closer and closer to a major fork in the road, and how valley leaders, national, state, and local, and farmers and dairymen and livestock owners and community members navigate which direction to take will significantly shape the future of the region. But that's what I love about the Central Valley. Even facing cutbacks and scarcity and an uncertain future when it comes to water and other issues, they also take care of their own. And two of those Valley community members, a local farmer and a state policymaker, are joining us here on this edition of Then There's California. We are in Reedley, about 20 miles east of Fresno, at Sweet Girl Farms, an authentic farm stand offering residents and visitors a variety of products. Sweet Girl Farms is supplied and nurtured by a family-owned farm owned by farmer Liset Garcia. Liset joined her parents at just 8 months old, selling produce in L.A. out of the back of a pickup truck. And then over the years, she and her family acquired their beloved farm here in Reedley, where they've permanently settled. She attended the University of California, Merced, for her Bachelor of Science in Molecular and Cell Biology with a minor in psychology. And she has a master's in public health at USC, and she continues to pursue online courses in human biology as a hobby. And we're always glad to have with us Senator Melissa Hurtado, and we're in her district right now. Senator Hurtado is Central Valley born and raised, and she continues to be a leader on Valley issues and work with all who are dedicated and invested, like she is, in improving the quality of life for Valley residents. And she's also the chair of the Senate Human Services Committee. Liset Garcia, thank you for having us here on your beautiful farm. We're right here in the middle of the farm.
It's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for coming over and visiting. It is a pleasure to have you.
Well, we're glad to be here. And Senator Hurtado, welcome back to Then There's California. It's nice to see you here in the middle of the farm, too.
Well, welcome back to the Central Valley. It's nice to have you here, and especially on this day where we're honoring Liset as Woman of the Year. You gave her bio, amazing, wonderful woman that is an inspiration not just to me, but a lot of other women across the Central Valley and really across the nation.
So congratulations. That's quite a distinction here for this big and beautiful valley and this big and beautiful district.
Thank you for, first off, awarding me, nominating me to be the recipient of this award. Was not expecting such a call when I was awarded and notified about it, so it's really surprising. And we were going to try and keep pushing forward this inspirational journey of mine and propagate it to the generations to come, because as the current generation of farmers ages, it has to be handed down to someone else. Someone has to do it to bring the community together, keep feeding the world, and I'm more than happy to be taking one step at a time.
Every opportunity that I can get, I want to make sure that people know outside of the Central Valley just how special this place is, but also just the amazing and special people that we have in this region, because there's a lot of stories to be told that haven't been heard. And I'm grateful for the opportunity today to be able to share, Liset's story with Californians and what her story means to all of us as a state. Because I've always said the Central Valley is a place that doesn't really get a whole lot of attention, but it's a place that means so much for every Californian. across the state.
Absolutely. Well, Liset, I definitely want to hear your story. It's a pretty extraordinary story coming from Southern California up here to the Valley. And talk about yourself and your farm and that arc of your life from growing up in Southern California and coming here.
So just like Senator Hurtado just said, I feel that the residents of the Central Valley perhaps sometimes get overlooked because the Valley might not have such a young, spirited city life, but nonetheless, it provides so much. And being a resident of LA and then now coming to the Valley, I appreciate it a lot. It's something that when I was growing up in South LA, in East LA, did I ever think that I was going to become a farmer? No. The career was pretty much set to like my parents sending me off to college. And then from there, building a career that was more office-like as opposed to a farm being my office. And I didn't appreciate, like Senator Hurtado said, it has so much to provide. Sometimes we don't realize it as Californians, what we have. But when you really look at it and immerse yourself in this country lifestyle, this farming lifestyle, then you really get to notice, like, my goodness, we have so much to be thankful for. I mean, look at our sunny background right now. For all the listeners, we are sitting, it's probably 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The bees are like buzzing. The birds are chirping, and it's wonderful to be sitting out here. And I mean, how more lucky can we be? Like, we can provide so much food, and we have so much potential, even despite the challenges that we have to deal with. So being in the shoes I am now, I was crazy to say, oh, there's nothing to do in the Valley. There's so much to do. There's so much opportunity, so many ways to get involved and really make a path for those future farmers.
Forgive me for asking the tacky question. Are you the sweet girl?
I'm the sweet girl.
Okay, I was going to assume.
I would say that all girls in the Valley are sweet.
Yes. I didn't know how I was going to approach that question. But tell us, and watching you, I mean, just in the short amount of time I've been here, you are one of the hardest working human beings I've ever seen. But you seem to have a lot of love, customers and friends. But tell us about this world that you are farming and harvesting and living in.
Well, okay, so I dove into farming unexpectedly after an accident. So I was living out in LA. I had the career set out because I had completed my master's degree. I was moving on to an official public health job. And in that midst of time when I graduated and maybe like a month thereafter, I was involved in an accident that left my 2 arms and hands pretty much numb, stitched up. And at that point, it was just me and another family member out in LA. So pretty alone. So my parents were really kind enough to say, hey, Liset, you're going through a tough time right now. You're out there pretty much by yourself. Come back to the farm, recover, do what you need to do, and then from there on, you know, like, you go on your way. So when I came to the farm here in Reedley, they were set up because they had been doing the farming gig on and off until they finally permanently settled here in Reedley from LA. And during that time span, I was pretty much out in college, so I didn't really get to immerse myself completely up until after my accident. And growing flowers is how I started to slowly plant a seed, literally, of like both me in like a spiritual like sense, and then but like physically too, because I started growing flowers that I had randomly seen ladies do on Instagram. I was scrolling through pages and I was like, I want to do that. It seems something that I could attain by myself with maybe little input economically. And so that's how I started. So farming was actually my therapy out from this very awkward stage where I was trying to get my career started, but I had an accident, so then physically get started again and working myself up to like just doing my own therapy by planting seeds, and then just mentally again, because yeah, that did take a toll on me. So in the midst of all that commotion with my accident, me healing, my parents were coincidentally building a farm stand here on the property, and because our background is in selling produce, I told them, you know what? I'm healing myself. I'm growing flowers. The farm stand, if you don't have anyone that's going to be taking it over, I can volunteer to take on take on it, and that would be my outlet for my flowers. So initially it was just going to be flowers. And then that's when I started to bring out whatever they already had growing, which includes nectarines, peaches, grapes, and then the citrus. And the more and more I kept diving into agriculture and farming, the more I started to realize, hey, I should grow vegetables, I should grow herbs, I should have like more bees out here and then like sell the honey out there. Oh, Mom, we have extra fruit, let's make aguas frescas. Oh, but we also have chiles and tomatoes. Okay, so would you be willing to make salsas? So that's how everything has evolved, and that's why the farm stand has a little bit of everything, because there's things that I've taken from what we already produce to just give it another presentation, whether it be like in aguas frescas, in a juice presentation, from the things that we already grow and have here at the farm.
And are we in the lemon grove and lemon orchard here?
It looks like lemons, but they're actually sweet limes.
Sweet limes.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're sweet limes, so they're not as sweet as an orange, but they are, you can just slice them and enjoy, and they make great teas. That's where we are located right now.
And Senator Hurtado, this is home to you too. I mean, obviously you are from Sanger, but this is your home as well.
Yes, it is. And as she's telling her story, and as we sit here out in this orchard, I'm reminded of my own home and the place where I grew up. And I have a little tree in my backyard, and we just kind of pull it out and eat it, and it's sweet, right? Mm-hmm. in a different way. But, you know, I'm also reminded of the flowers. I go and purchase myself flowers at times because, you know, politics can be a little bit stressful, and especially when you're trying to deliver all these resources that the Central Valley needs. Mm-hmm. There's just days and weeks where I will go and just buy myself some flowers because they provide me with a sense of peace, a reminder of the region that I represent, and it's just a reminder of everything will be all right. Keep on going, and life is so precious. The valley is so precious, and every minute and every second is completely worth it.
Liset had talked about the beauty of the sunshine and being out here in the very late winter, early spring, but you could say the sunshine and what we're seeing here belies some real concerns that are facing the valley right now when it comes to access to water, not only from the sky, but from other sources. I think I just heard this morning that the area of the state that's been in drought is now increasing. There's going to be further cutbacks. So there's a lot of things ahead for the valley in that regard. You want to talk some more about that?
Absolutely. One of the things that I've been trying to do at the state level is raise awareness about the water challenges that we've had in the Central Valley, what they mean for the rest of the state, but also just water scarcity and how it's going to become an issue worldwide. And that's part of climate change, and we have to adapt and become more resourceful with the limited resources that we have. Climate change is impacting the amount of water we have in the state. It's going to grow. We already know that we're facing the biggest and worst drought it's seen in 1,200 years here in the western states. The Central Valley, of course, we know that it's been a challenge for many, many years. It feels like it's almost never ended, and I don't think that it has. And so farmers here are adapting, and I just think it's interesting that Liset also has background in public health, because one of the things that I tell folks in Sacramento is that water scarcity is not just about less water wells going dry. It's about nutrition. It's about access to food, because when you can't plant or you can't grow, that's a food supply issue that's not just for Californians. And I know that we feel very lucky at times that, you know, our shelves at the grocery stores are not going to go empty, but that's the reality when farms like Liset go dry. And that's a good, nutritious food that we need in order to have good health. And so, you know, we talk about how the diseases that come with climate change, they're not just diseases that, like COVID-19, that jump from animal to human. It could be, you know, they could jump from plants to humans as well. And we know that with a warmer and more dry climate in this region, there's more probability for diseases to jump to humans. And we know that diseases are also a major threat to our food supply chain.
Liset, you have this extraordinary scholastic education background in such diverse fields on human psychology and biology. You're not doing what you went to college for. This has been its own college education. But talk about the nexus between that work and that study that you've done and what you do out here.
I think for the unexperienced eye, it seems like nothing connects with anything in terms of like my education and then what I'm actually doing. But in reality, it does boil down to food and how ease of access or not you have it, because at the end of the day, we all need food to fuel our bodies, our mind, our spirit. And I do that through both educating through videos, but also by being and actually executing on like bringing out product. So coincidentally, it just came together. Yeah, because the biology background, that just gave me the sense of like, hey, the soil is biology. That's a realm of its own that I still need to study and see how my soil is either prepared or not prepared to give me a good crop, to withstand droughts, to see like what weeds are going to grow, not grow. So that's the biology part, along with the chemistry classes that I took. I'm like, yeah, NPK and nitrogen, potassium, and then phosphorus. Like the plants need that. Okay, great. And so I feel it's becoming more popular with the newer generation farmers. Like it's a process that does sit in a lot of the no-till farmers and like the regenerative farming like world, because that's, I feel, taking a lot of momentum now and going back to like rudimentary practices as opposed to very industrialized ag practices. And so coincidentally, my biology degree has served its purpose. And then psychology, I mean, we need to communicate. I need to talk to people when I'm out at the farm stand. So I have to read humans. But I don't think you need a psychology degree to read humans. We understand the vibes, as we call it now, you know? We understand, yeah.
Right.
So the psychology degree, of course, sure, we'll say it's helping me too.
Okay.
And then the public health degree, I mean, what more public health do you want me to do? I'm literally feeding you healthy foods. So that is public health. Like, you want to diminish diseases. And that's the study of epidemiology. So how do you do that? Okay, well, you give them access to good food, good nutritious food. And they're having direct access to that in the farm. So I think all in all, without knowing and then without really intending to, this farming gig is working out for me.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
Liset, talk about drought and climate change and diseases and pests and how that is affecting what you have here at Sweet Girl Farms.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unravel there because it's a huge issue in terms of, like, if you don't have water, then you don't have life. That's very simply put, right? But the ramifications are so large, and it takes us a while to visualize and see them play out. But, you know, hopefully they never play out because that's really scary to think. But unfortunately, I mean, it's happening now, and we're living through it. So how much can we plant? That's always going to be a question mark. It is a question mark because then that depends on, like, for example, me just being a small farmer here. If I don't have enough water resources, then yeah, then I have to limit back on the crops that I grow, the amount that I grow, and what I'll be able to pump out. And then I feel that a lot of critical thinking needs to be put on that, because then can I adapt to more drought tolerant crops? I don't know. That's a question mark, right? But then that changes also my relationship with my community, because as a small farm, even though that is the case, and I say small farm because, you know, there's corporate farms here. I'm just a minute little, like a little speck of sand in this world. But nonetheless, the community does look out to someone more personable. That's not always corporate America. That you can't do that if you go up to a packing house. You can't talk to the actual farmer. You know, you just get a secretary or someone that's going to be the representative of said company. When you come out to a farm stand, yeah, more than likely the person that owns that plot of land is going to be the one also standing and selling you the produce. So if I don't have the crops to sell to my direct community, then the direct community is like, well, then we'll just go to the store. This water scarcity, the climate change, everything that stops us from being farmers, whether it be politically or just by natural occurrences, it affects regardless. And so that's always the question mark that comes about when there's no water allocation. Then, like I talk to other farmers and then they're like, yeah, we're not getting any water. But what is the consensus in terms of moving forward? How can we also do what we can to still equally share the resources? Fine. Okay, great. But finding ways to communicate with one another and then work out, okay, then what are the best alternatives and then who's in and who's not? Because I understand farms are also businesses. So that's why I said there's a lot to unravel in this one subject area that's water.
And obviously, Senator Hurtado, Liset's comments and perspectives on this resonate with you, and I wanted to get some of your reaction on that and some of the stories you've heard from other farmers in the valley, in the district, that are dealing with the federal government water allocations being pulled away from them, same with the state. I mean, you even take a farmer like Joel Del Bosque in Firebaugh, who's got hundreds of acres out there, many of which are going fallow. He's looking at his future as a farmer and for his family.
Yeah, I think that, as I always say, farmers are at the forefront of fighting climate change. And if we really want to adapt or solve some of the challenges that we have ahead of us because of climate change, we really have to look to farmers, because they're the ones that have been traditionally, historically, and currently leading the charge. And so this is all too common, what I hear throughout the Senate district, throughout the region. Obviously, there's more frustration. I think Liset's being a little sweet today, but for the most part, there's a lot of frustration, and especially during, the summer days where homes go out of water, and there's anger, there's frustration. They see the price of water going up, the cost, fertilizers. There's the pest issues that also come as a result of climate change. So there's so much that a farmer has to deal with to be able to provide for the communities across the state and around the world, that they need to be taken more into account, and they don't feel that is what is happening.
You brought up, Senator, the issue of farming and its relation to hunger and access to food. And last year, you really helped expose the state of California to nutritional challenges that people have, particularly here in the Valley. You began a program with legislation, Comida para Todos. Tell us about what the status of that process and that thinking is as we get into 2022.
Well, what I also tell individuals when it comes to the climate change crisis, there's a nexus between energy, water, human health, and food. And so one of the biggest threats that I see, and the most concerning for me, is that, yes, we're going to have less water. We know that. But what does that mean? And that means that we're going to have less food. And so for me, sponsoring Comida para Todos and that legislation, it was like the humane thing to do in a climate change environment, because it shouldn't matter where you were born or where you come from or what your legal status is. Everyone should have access to food. It's a human right. It's the right thing to do, and not everybody has access to food benefits in the state of California. And so we need to change that. And luckily there's some funding to move things along, but there's still a lot more work that needs to be done. And as climate change makes things worse for individuals, as drought occurs, not just in the Valley or in western states, but around the world, we'll see a lot more migration, a lot more hunger. And so that's the crisis that I see that we'll have to, as California tends to lead in many things, we'll have to deal with and help with.
And Liset, as a farmer, you play a key role. You are the Comida para Todos. Give us your perspective on those kind of disparities and those concerns about food access in this area regarding drought and climate change, but just also the availability of food to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's scary. It's scary to think that there are days where things aren't actually in stock in local grocery stores. We're already seeing that with the pandemic rolling in and the supply chain being disrupted because a lot of things also get imported into our areas. I mean, there's already things like that happening, and I hear about that with customers that they're like, well, if Liset here doesn't have it, then I have to go to the grocery store, right? I was saying that. But then if you go to the grocery store and it's not there, then it's like, what do you do? Which I did hear several customers last year tell me, I've gone to several Save Marts and they don't have anything. They're like, what's going on? And people are looking for answers. And the farm stand, because it is like a community hub, people do come out here and express their concerns, their opinions. And so it's not something that I haven't heard. And like the senator is saying, what do? It's like we provide the food because regardless, we all need food to survive. And it's how she's saying, it's just the right thing to do. So that's part of the reason that why I'm here, and I'm going to keep trying to provide for the community, even though there's always going to be those challenges. Is it scary? Absolutely. It's scary for everyone because it's affecting everyone. The gas prices are up a very considerable amount, and as a farmer out here on the outskirts of town, do I get as many customers? At this point, I don't, because things like that affect, right? So then that has what other effects? Okay, well then now people don't come out to get their fresh cilantro, fresh oranges, that we know it's directly cut from literally a few steps behind the farm stand. I already know that it's going to have more nutritional content, more flavor, more, it's going to leave the customers wanting to eat that type of quality, which is high quality because it's direct. But then if you go to the store and you can't get that, then what do we do? Because we can only go to the store here since it's closer than it is to the farm stand. Does that make sense? So it's a tug of war in between everyone's situation. Everyone's situation boils down to what are their economics? What are their transportation? Do they have a transportation method? Obviously, we all have like the different situations that we come from, and combined with that and then the challenges, yeah, it's scary to see how we can still provide and bring it as easy access to the community. So those are my challenges right now. For that reason, I promote it through social media to, even if they don't come and buy from the farm stand, then at least I'm teaching them, hey, this is how you can grow a peach tree, or this is how to prune it. Or so there's also those ways of educating more people on how to grow their own food.
Right. We have talked with Senator Hurtado in the past about how these kind of issues, these challenges, keep her awake at night. So as a business person, as a farmer, do you feel the burden of the world on your shoulders with this?
Oh, yeah. But I knew that coming in. I knew that that was going to be the case just from being a business owner, because I'm kind of at the disposal of the business because that's how much invested I am. I know everyone is different. Everyone sets their limits and their boundaries. But to me, because throughout the years, the farm stand has become more than just a farm stand. So it is literally my lifestyle.
Right.
And with that comes a devotion for you to supply and be there for your community. Just how the community has been out here for me, and you saw that. We had people out here smiling and having fun with us.
Yes.
You know, you see
but,
also.
But they love you. I mean, you are their friend.
And I think that that's the deepest and most honorable award that I have, because, I mean, without them, I'm not anything. But then also, now I know that I have a place in the community, so my job is to carry that quote-unquote pressure, and I put that in quotations because it's the lifestyle now that I carry. Mm-hmm. And so with that, it alleviates me, like, overjudging myself and just doing the best that I can to give as much of like the food that I can, like as much as I can produce. And you'll see me tearing myself up to pieces. Like, I'm going to like do this, and I want to do this too. And someone asked me to get this at the farm stand, and I want to do it because the community asks for it. Yeah.
Well, Senator Hurtado, it must be really reassuring to have such a partner in this process as Liset here doing all of this work and just having her heart in such a right place.
What's that Central Valley resilient spirit, right? It's about truly caring about your community and the people that live in it, and someone is always there offering to give you something, not expecting anything in return. And that's that's the way of living here in the Central Valley. It's a lifestyle. It's a different lifestyle here in the Valley that I think we have, but I think it's a very precious one that really just more in touch with each other, with people, and making sure everyone's good.
Senator, you have reminded us in the past that, of course, droughts have far-reaching impacts, including on communities, and you're helping to address all of that, including improving access to water and to community well-being. And a lot of that investment, of course, means shoring up what's going on here in the Valley, things that need to be done. There's the money that was received for the Frank Kern Canal and the Delta Mendola and San Luis Reservoir. Talk about this process of big sky, if you will, looking for ways to invest in the infrastructure and in the resources to help farmers like Liset and families in the Valley.
Well, I'll have to say that when I first joined the State Senate in 2018, this was the top bill that I really started off with, SB 559, to fix the Frank Kern Canal. And the perception of what the bill was trying to do, or what it was seeking to do, was, well, this is a push to help big ag. And it really took a lot of doing my own research, right? Knowing what I know about the community that I live in and the communities that I had heard from, and being able to articulate those stories, my own story, the research, and then educating my colleagues and others about what fixing this Frank Kern Canal meant to our community and our community members, but also what it means to the rest of California, because it is an investment in fixing this part of the canals that are in the valley, but there's a benefit to all Californians by making this investment. And it was a challenge, and I feel like at times it still is a challenge to be able to have others understand what I know. But I feel that there's a lot of progress that has been made. And as a region, we're working together, unlike I think ever before, to really solve the issues of water, from fixing the canals to making sure that we get funding to get new wells for communities. And so I see a lot more collaboration and working together in the region, but I also see more understanding of what this region provides for the rest of California. And I'll tell you, I have colleagues now that say, oh, the water situation in the valley, what's going on? And I'm worried. I mean, should we be worried about the food supply chain? And so they ask me now, and before they probably didn't know all too much what that exactly meant. And hearing Liset's stories and other stories, it makes a whole lot of difference, so people really understand, not just my colleagues, but all of California, just how important this region is.
It has been said that California is confronting a 21st century water crisis with a 20th century infrastructure and 19th century laws. What other reforms do you think are needed to make the changes, make the healing, make the recovery, the sustainability more long-term?
Well, first and foremost, I think that as individuals and residents of California, we need to just come together. As politicians, we need to come together and recognize where there are challenges and really just focus on trying to solve the issues. For me personally, I see that water is no longer what it used to be, at least when these laws were passed. Like the canals, for example, the water infrastructure that provides water for 31 million Californians. It was created and built in a time when our population was 20 million, half of what we have now. And we've been able to do quite well with that old, outdated infrastructure system, but we haven't been able to sustain it, right? We're just in a different time. We have 40 million people. There's a housing crisis that we have to deal. We need water to build homes. And so we really have to rethink how we deal and manage water in the state of California, because we can't keep the status quo up. We need to really change it. I'll tell you that there's a lot of different agencies, commissions, and boards that touch on water or a particular issue of water. And so it's almost like you have different agencies and boards working on issues in a silo manner. And now we're dealing with water scarcity, climate change. We're dealing with cyber attacks to our water infrastructure system. I mean, who would have ever thought that you needed to have cybersecurity to your water infrastructure back in the 50s or the 60s? But now we should have it. We should have cybersecurity in our water infrastructure systems, and we don't. And so I think there's a better way to have these agencies really work together. That's something that we got to figure out on what's the best way for California to manage its water so that people don't go without water, because the situation's really bad right now. And if we don't fix it, it will get worse.
Well, speaking of that, you have a new piece of legislation, albeit it sounds like perhaps a controversial piece of legislation that really would, as you have said, reimagine water management for California here into the 21st century. Tell us about SB 1219.
So SB 1219 really touches on those issues of water in the state of California and how we manage it. And it really seeks to find a new way to manage water in the state of California. And part of what the bill is seeking to do is to sunset the California State Water Board. And part of that is because what I've heard across the Central Valley and even outside of the Central Valley is that it's not working for people. And I'll tell you that I have a community that I represent down in Kern County that it took about 15 years for them to get the adequate infrastructure and the funding from the water board for them to have safe, clean, affordable water. And it shouldn't take 15 years to get that kind of infrastructure, and especially if the funding for water is there. And it's just, I think that's part of the frustration for Californians as well on the other end. So the water board's one piece. You know, the Water Commission, for example, has funding for other infrastructure projects like the Sites Reservoir that people have been waiting years for it to happen. We know we're going to be in a very difficult challenge with water shortages this year, and we're still talking about building it. Well, it shouldn't take this long. We're in a crisis. We're in a climate crisis, and the agencies and the commissions are not working. We got to make it work, but we also got to look towards the future and what does climate change and water scarcity mean for California? Because there's so much more to it. It's not just the canals that run through the valley. It's also Lake Mead and the Colorado River and the water that they provide to Southern California that helps offset some of the water that they get from the north. And then all the other western states that are going to need water as well. And so when you have your water underground going dry and the water above going dry or limited, we have to really find solutions now.
And you have suggested replacing the board with a blue ribbon commission. You know how a lot of people feel about blue ribbon commissions. How is this commission going to be effective and do what the water board is not doing?
Well, what it would do is place the water board under the Department of Water Resources. It would create a commission because, as we've been talking about today, when it comes to water scarcity and droughts, it's not just less water. There's a whole lot more that comes with less water. And if we're not planning for it, right, if we're not critically thinking about the present, but also the near future and the future, then we're going to be in the same situation that we are in today. And so there's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of work that, for example, NASA is doing to research river deltas. There's conversations about carbon capture sequestration in deltas. There's just a lot of research and technology that is occurring that we haven't, as state agencies or commissions or boards, adapted to, that we should be, because it could significantly improve the situation that we're in today and into the future.
You have received a lot of pushback since you've introduced this legislation. People who are saying Melissa Hurtado is not a friend of the Delta and that it's irresponsible governance and creating this powerless blue ribbon commission, cutting the public out of the process, lack of transparency, putting the water board actually at the mercy of the Department of Water Resources. You probably were anticipating this, but what's your reaction to some of this that's coming at you and this legislation?
I'd like to invite them down to the Central Valley. I'd like them to come on down and live in the Central Valley and in a community that goes dry and still have to go to work. And when you come home, you want to take a shower. It's a hot day and you have no water. I want them to understand where I'm coming from and what I'm pushing for and the frustration that I feel, because it's frustration that I share with the people that I represent. These are difficult times, and there's got to be a balance, right? We got to protect our ecosystem, but we also have to protect humans. That's where I'm coming from. I'm trying to protect the people that I represent, and the people that I represent suffer from valley fever, And it gets worse when there is a drought and when we have less water. And when you have water shortages, when you have cutbacks, that impacts the well-being and the health of the people that I represent, which includes my family too. And so it makes me angry. It makes me just that much more motivated to get others to understand the challenges that we face, because the reality is it's not just the Central Valley that's going to be struggling from water scarcity. It's going to be all Western states. We're all in this together. And so we just so happen, unfortunately, to be at the forefront of this fight against climate change. And so we need to be able to just learn and respect each other's opinions, but really come together to solve the problems, because this is a problem we're all going to be impacted by.
Right. Liset Garcia, as a farmer, you are busy every day working your fields, managing your business. In the meantime, at Sacramento and different levels, a lot of these decisions are being made that ultimately will impact you and your community as farmers. Any feelings about this that are resonating with you and these issues that the senator's talking about?
My family and I, we've already lived through it, actually, last year. Our house well, that's the one that went dry last year. Mm-hmm. So as of right now, we're only depending on our ag well. Yeah. So I turn on my irrigation lines and I have drip irrigation. So I'm like, okay, we're going to set those so that we can get the crops irrigated. Nothing comes out. And I was like, oh, okay, it's probably the pump, electrical, something went off. Come out here to the house and there's no water pressure. We're like, okay, trying to stay calm. And then, we open up our well because we have access to just see where the water level is and measure it. Yeah, we only had, I think, 3 feet of water. That's where our water table was. So there wasn't enough water pressure. At that point, we were like, okay, things are going to take a toll. There's things that are going to have to be let go. And a lot of the crops that I would normally grow, they were all burnt because our valley heats are no joke. And I lost a lot of things. Yeah. Wow. And aside from it being a business loss, I think that's the least. It was more of the personal toll that it takes, because at that point I felt like I was living in a third world country. We couldn't shower. We had to ask for family and friends to wash our dirty clothes. We're farmers. I think you guys can imagine how soiled we come out every single day. And then to get water for food, we had to go out and try to source the whole bunch of jugs. It's not something that I want to live through again. Mm-hmm. And thankfully my parents, because they came from that poor background, they were able to mentally go on with life. I think that without my parents, I would not be able to have this much mental resilience that I have. And because they had knowledge of okay, you go to the river and you get water, but then yeah, there's no water allocation this year, which was in 2021. We're we didn't get any water allocation. So even if we did want to go to a ditch or a canal here, there wasn't any water. So at a certain point, yeah, you're kind of embarrassed because you're I can't believe this is how I'm living. It's hard. It's hard to, like I said, when you come from a place where you have everything and then it's taken away from you like that, and then the frustration that comes afterwards, okay, then what do you do? Who can share their knowledge to say, hey, Liset, this is how you can apply for someone to bring you out a tank of portable water and stuff, Mm-hmm. Because it was our first time going through such a thing, and because it's something that comes to you sometimes unexpectedly, because like you said, since we're busy running our own livelihoods and our businesses and whatever, it's unfortunate that we do put it in the back of our mind. But when it happens, it's like a train running over you.
Clearly, Senator Hurtado, your colleagues in Sacramento need to pay attention to hear Liset's story more.
Absolutely, and she shares her story and the resilient spirit that her parents have. I'd say that that's something that we have in common. My parents are immigrants from Mexico, and they came from the state of San Luis Potosí. My father and I sometimes have conversations about this drought and what is happening. His family, my grandfather was a bracero, was here during the bracero program. That's how the family made its way to the state of California, to the United States, in search of, money in search of the American dream. And he also spoke about the times that there was droughts in Mexico and San Luis Potosí and how bad it was and how they, had to overcome those challenges, how that also in part led to migration. And it was a scary thing for them from what they tell me, but it's also, they still have this just resilient spirit that despite the challenges, we're going to move on and move ahead and we're going to survive and we're going to make it happen. And I think that kind of resilient spirit is what's going to help us solve a lot of these climate crisis issues that we have ahead of us and in front of us.
Absolutely. Well, I will start to bring us to a closing thought here, and I'll get both of your reactions. Someone once said that eating is an agricultural act. That makes all of us farmers, in a sense, especially when it comes to water, that somebody somewhere must devote a lot of water to the process of feeding you. And when it comes to farming, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of where. We got to farm, we have to eat. What do you say to that, Senator? Are we all farmers?
I like to think so, and I'll say that when I don't have food, I'm not the happiest person in the world. So food is much more than just, and agriculture is not just agriculture. It's about way of life. It's about health. Food means so much more than what we just know it to be.
And Liset, do you think part of preserving the act of farming into the future is continuing to remind people, to educate people on the importance of sustaining and preserving agriculture and conserving water, and that it bears fruit, no pun intended, in their lives? And are we all farmers in that sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think nowadays you can acquire your plants and then grow them in your backyard. Then you're going to start seeing what we see on a bigger scale, because it's so nice to feel that you've set up a plant that will nurture you in return after you nurture it. And then you'll understand the satisfaction that farmers have.
And what I love about both of you here as Sisters of the Valley is the hard work. Obviously, there's some uncertain times ahead. There are a lot of forks in the road. But I see from both of you a dedication and a love and a gratitude. There is a gratitude for the land that you live on and the communities that you live in and the people that you live in those communities with.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. If you're not humble, the farm will humble you.
Exactly.
That's a great line to lean on. Well, I am truly humbled talking to both of you, as always. And Liset, my goodness, the work that you do, the spirit that you keep up, this beautiful acreage has your heart and soul and your blood, sweat, and tears in it. Thank you for letting us come out here on this beautiful farm, on this beautiful day. And I just really appreciate you letting us hear your story and your perspectives on this as somebody who's walking the walk when it comes to these farming and ag issues. So thank you for joining us.
Of course.
And Senator, thank you so much. It's been a while, so it's nice to be back here in the Valley with you.
We're glad to have you back, and I want to just thank Liset for allowing us to be here, and I hope that you got to enjoy a little bit of the Central Valley
life. I can't wait to try those oranges from the stand.
Likewise.
Oh, my gosh. Hopefully I'll have some left by the time I get home. Thank you very much, State Senator Melissa Hurtado and Liset Garcia, the proprietor of Sweet Girl Farms here in Reedley, California. And that is a wrap for Then There's California, a production of the California State Senate Democratic Caucus, with technical assistance and production support from Martin Ashley, Bob Rolte, Brian Shadden, McClina Woods, Lisa Murphy, Ricardo Sainz Ion, and the graphic artistry of Tim Davis. From Reedley, California, on behalf of State Senator Melissa Hurtado and Liset Garcia of Sweet Girl Farms here in California Central Valley, I'm Brian Green. Thanks for listening to Then There's California.